And that's Steiner's rather elaborate mythology of the incarnation of the Christ being. I'm amazed that I remembered most of it.
Fascinating. Does anyone else accept this theory, or?
No, nobody outside of anthropology.
This is totally unique, right?
Yes, yes.
So this is why he didn't accept Krishnamurti as being.
Exactly right. Yes.
But what about the Jesus source? Now he's speaking about the Christ being.
Right.
But then there is the Jesus, or that gets, I suppose, that transforms once the Christ being comes into.
I think so.
Jesus
Yes,
body.
I think so. But
Right.
the Jesus was the Zoroaster. The Jesus
Right.
ego you're talking about was which ego are we talking about? The Nathan Boy backward ego, which had been displaced into the astral plane once Zoroaster transmigrates into him. And then you have that, and then when the Christ being comes down into the Zoroaster, you have a feeling that gets displaced in turn into the astral world. And then you just have this sort of Christ being. So that's that mythology. And then just to finish up with Steiner, we're just about done here, is just the epoch of the consciousness soul then, which began in 1413 AD, represented something new with respect to the fact that Christ has been now but a part of the earth, the spirit of the earth, as it were, in all those intervening centuries. And the development of Christianity over those centuries actually recapitulates the development of it from etheric to astral to physical. But in 1413, men began to have a new style of thinking in Northern Europe, where prior to this time, when individuals had thoughts, they didn't think that they originated the thoughts. They thought that divine beings had come down into them and inspired them with these thoughts. And Steiner says that about 1413, what happens is, as you move into this new epoch of Northern European civilization, men began to think their own thoughts and began to divorce themselves once again from the spiritual world and develop their own thoughts and begin to use the consciousness soul, which has to do with the will, to apply it to the sensory world to attain mastery over it through all of this development of technology that we've had. So the whole epoch of the consciousness soul has been this dedicated to this total divorce from the spiritual world. We've forgotten about the gods, but in the meantime, we've used our concept of individuality and developed it, and now we have the myth of respect for the individual, which is something quite unique in the West. And now we have this idea of mastery over the physical world with these machines. But now, of course, as everyone knows, that's flipping into a problem with all these ecological problems. But Steiner said that the next, the event, remember, that I made reference to about the Archangel Michael, brings us to our sort of culminating point. Steiner says that in about 1879, there was a war in heaven, let's say in the astral plane, between the Archangel Michael and these other Ahrimanic beings who were expelled from the astral plane, wound up wandering on Earth looking to possess the souls of men, and did so, and led to the kind of outbreak of World War I that started the madness of the 20th century. But the Archangel Michael, meanwhile, ascended from the level of an archangel to an archai, in other words, became a time spirit, and in doing that also descended down into the Earth's etheric body. And in doing so, the second 1,000 years of the epoch of the consciousness soul will be now the beginning of what Steiner calls the Michaelic age, which is the beginning now of the turning back to the spiritual world with, Michael is a personification of, he's the archangel who rules over intelligence. And this incredible intellectual mind that we've developed in Northern Europe has got to be kept. We can't just throw it in the garbage. And it has to be brought into unity with the spiritual world. So it is the mission of the Archangel Michael to descend down into us and help us to reconnect back to the spiritual world without losing our sense of self-awareness, without losing our sense of true individuality and the sense of clear thinking. So this represents the annunciation of a new age, this Michaelic age. And Steiner saw this as representing the next development in the history of the rest of the consciousness soul, which will go on to 3573. And just one final note about that is that those epochs that go every 2,000 years are correlated with the Platonic months that have to do with the precession of the equinoxes, but they overlap, they stride. In other words, you have, Cancer, the month of Cancer being, everybody calibrates it a little bit differently, but if you say 8,000 to 6,000, and we had the Hindus come in, the Hindu culture epoch dates from 7227 BC to, what did I say, what was it, 5067. You can see how it overlaps with both Cancer and Gemini. If you round it off, it's 6,000 to 4,000. So that it has a sort of 7,000 picks up the last 1,000 years of the Cancer epoch, and 5,000 moves into the first 1,000 years of the Gemini epoch. So his cultural epochs straddle each of these Platonic months, so that each one of those cultures has sort of one foot in both of these ages as you go along the way. So he was very conscious about this, because individuals reincarnate every 1,000 years, 2,000 years for bisexuality, and it's linked in with this precession of the equinoxes. And then he has these sub-epochs that are linked with archangels. The age of the Archangel Michael, which will last about 370 years or so, was preceded by the age of the Archangel Gabriel, which began right around 1500. And Gabriel is the archangel that's associated with births and heredity. And there's an awful lot of Annunciation paintings done right in this time period, between 1400 and 1500, of the Archangel Gabriel announcing to the Virgin the Annunciation of the birth of Christ. There's a lot of them in there. And then he has 7 of these angels linking every 300 years backward. They become sort of regent of these sub-epochs every 300 years. So the previous Michael age would have been about the period of Alexander the Great and Aristotle, and that whole period of cosmopolitanism, so that our age then is in resonance with the great cosmopolitanism of that age, the age of the Hellenistic period of the Greeks. So that brings everything about full circle to where I wanted to be with respect to Steiner. And that gives you a sense of the enormity and complexity of his model. It's absolutely gigantic. And how anybody could have come up with this, I just have no idea.
Was he